And of course, at this point, we'll go back to the United Nations General Assembly, the ongoing 78th summit, where, of course, Nigeria's president actually gave an address, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Right now, we have with us Professor of International Relations and Diplomacy, Usman Tsar, joining me to unpack all of that particular development. Now, if you can hear me, Professor, Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu at the ongoing United Nations General Assembly Summit in New York said the growth of Africa has been hindered due to lack of good governance. Of course, some will say this has been attributed to the recent coups we are seeing in some African countries. How do you react to this particular development?
President Tinubu's statement is a statement of fact. We have crisis of leadership in Africa, crisis of governance. The political class in most states in Africa, with very few exceptions, is not able to deliver on the dividends of democracy. Democracy has not become the democracy of the people's desire. It's just an institutional charade to, bring people into power or elites to come to power. And once they're in power, they insulate themselves in state houses and they have come up with the policies that will bring about the development that the people need. So for President Tinubu to make that statement is actually a consolation because he is, making a factual statement.
All right, another statement the president actually did make is that he mentioned that broken promises, unfair treatment and outright exploitation from abroad have also exerted a heavy toll on the continent, talking about Africa and its ability to progress. How do you react to this particular statement?
Well, the African countries have not broken from the shackles of colonialism. Although colonialism has left Africa for over 60 years, it appears most African countries are still beholden to their, ex-colonial masters. The institutions that are built by most African countries are institutions that are still tied to the appendage of the colonial states. So if you look at the former Anglophone countries, you realize that there are parts and protocols that are still tying the economies and the institutions of Anglophone countries to Britain. So also for Francophone countries, the connection between France and Francophonie is even more endemic than the other ex-colonial masters. That France, interferes directly in the affairs of its former colonies. So because of all this, African countries have not been able to sit down and come up with a policy, a united policy that will give them a sense of direction in a united way. Of course, we have the African Union and the African Peer Review Mechanism and other new institutions that came into being since 2002. But most of these institutions so far have not been able to overcome the challenges of foreign interference. And in addition to ex-colonial masters, we also have new entrants, imperialist entrants into the African political space. For instance, China is one such new entrant that is making a headway into inroad into the economies of Africa. So, but China's interference is not as endemic or as toxic as that of the Europeans. But nevertheless, it is an interference. It is the interference that will in the coming years show its real self.
All right.
So head or tail, African countries are really, really under the spell of foreign actors, and that is also a statement of fact.
All right. Now, you talked about Africa or some African countries still being attached to the apron strings of foreign, will I call it, counterparts right now, or the Western powers. But again, I want to put it to you. Do you think that at this point, certain African nations should still be looking out for handouts from the West I mean, or would you just say it's a mere sense of entitlement on many of their part?
African countries have no reason whatsoever to look for handouts from foreign countries. The resource base in Africa is very rich. Africa has the human resources and the material resources to take care of itself. And the argument has already been made several times in the past that what Africa needs is not fish, but the ability to fish. So if foreign countries are to bring any idea, the idea is better than, giving Africa, handout. Handout is not what Africa needs. Africa has come of age. This statement has been made long time ago by late General Murtala Mohammed. But I'm not sure we have been able to, put that into practice. So many African countries are still looking up to the foreigners for handout, and this is unfortunate. We have the resource. What we need in Africa is leadership and institution building. We need to build strong institutions that will stand the test of time and that will provide the needed leadership for Africa to pull itself out of underdevelopment. So handout is not a good idea for African countries. And what Africa needs is not fish, but it means to fish.
All right. Now, before I let you go, Professor, what is your take on the Sustainable Development Goals? I mean, your assessment so far, and what do you see concerning it in the nearest future, particularly as it relates to Africa?
Well, Africa's track record in Sustainable Development Goals is not very encouraging.